You're listening to part 2 of a Dear Applicants podcast episode. Check out last week's episode to listen to part 1 of this interview. In any case, King's. Why King's over other unis in the UK?
So when I applied for the UCAS, when I was
So you didn't try Oxford, Cambridge?
No, I did. I
did?
tried for a pure geography course in Oxford back then, but that didn't work out when I applied. So when I applied for UCAS, I was kind of torn between whether I wanted to do geography or geography with economics, because the geography with economics curriculum did look a little bit like something of interest to me as well, when thinking about how countries move through different stages and all that. So I did a mix. So King's was the only course that I eventually applied to that was just focusing on geography.
Mm-hmm.
I applied to a couple of other universities like Durham and I think Edinburgh, UCL, where it was geography either with or in economics. And eventually I had decided that I wanted to focus just on geography. So it looked like the choice was already made for me from the time of application. So,
and tell us about your time at King's.
Oh, it was...
You loved it, right?
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it. There's so many parts of King's, right? The experience at King's. I think the biggest takeaway that I have from King's, which in a very strange turnout of events is the reason why I'm connected to Ivy Prep as well, through Matthias.
Oh, right.
Matthias's wife, in fact,
Was at King's?
Was at King's, because Matthias's wife was my roommate.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, but anyway, so I think the most exciting or my biggest takeaway from King's is actually the support system that I was able to build on independently when I was there. I think in Singapore, we're all very used to living with family. We've had our own comfort zones. And I think flying halfway across the world into an education system that you're not familiar with, a city that is pretty new to me as well, and new people, new friends, new classmates was just something that was very exciting, in fact, for me. In the first year, we got to live in the halls, which was interesting because it was my first attempt at trying powdered eggs, uncooked chicken.
Uncooked chicken.
Yes. Okay. And all of those strange things. But we lived through that. And in the second year, towards the end of the first year, we started looking for our own flats because accommodation, it was only guaranteed for the first year. So it was interesting trying to find a place to rent out with fellow Singaporean women who also didn't have an experience finding things like renting a place and all that. So we eventually landed on a flat together. And then with the UK being the UK, there were rats in the house and all those experiences brought it together, right? But I think at the end of the day, those are experiences that I wouldn't trade for anything else. And it's probably one of the biggest reasons why I look back at my time in the UK with a lot of joy, right? We got to make a lot of new friends, good friends there, and try out an experience that I wouldn't otherwise have had. So,
and speaking about the social aspects of university, did you have the opportunity to meet other people that were as interested in geography as you? Were there any clubs or organizations over there?
For sure. So the good thing about choosing a discipline that is not typically popular with Singaporeans who go abroad, if you had chosen, I had chosen law or maths and economics, there would be tons of Singaporeans in my course. But choosing geography meant that I was the only Singaporean, or rather I was the only Asian girl in my entire cohort of my entire intake of geography students. That forced me to really step out of my comfort zone, to talk to new people, meet with new people, do projects with people who maybe don't understand my Singapore accent at the first go. I had to repeat myself a couple of times. But I think that's part and parcel of the whole overseas experience. You get to meet new people who are so different from you, and you learn from them, and actually they learn from you as well. And I was very fortunate that the kind of group of classmates that I had at at King's were very welcoming to me. They were always bringing me around London in my first couple of weeks, helping me with like day-to-day things like how to set up a bank account, how to get different rail passes, what discounts you could get at different passes. And towards the end of our first year, when we moved into summer break, we actually did like a little holiday together as well. So I got to visit their homes over the different summers.
Where were they from?
So one of them was from Kent, so it's a lot nearer to London. So, but because of that particular trip, we got to visit the White Cliffs of Dover as well,
Okay.
which is a geographical landscape in itself.
Did it live up to the hype for you?
Well, it was a little bit too windy as I remember it to be, but all good. And then another of my friend was from Welsh, so Cardiff. So bringing me around to see all the landscapes of Cardiff, try different food items that she fancied in her hometown.
Uncooked chicken?
Yeah.
Were there any food in particular that you...
I think it was a little bit of a Welsh cake, like a pancake.
Okay.
I can't remember the name of it.
It was sweet?
Yeah, it's a little bit, reminded me a bit about McDonald's hotcakes.
Okay.
Which don't kill me, don't crucify me.
Okay.
But yeah, so so tons of exciting things, tons of different experiences that I wouldn't have had if I had chosen to stay in Singapore, I believe.
Got it. So basically just opened just exposed you to people from different places, different backgrounds. You were learning different perspectives and stuff like that. Do you feel as though that has helped you personally or even professionally? That exposure to people who come from all over the place, that see the same things that you see, but just in a different way.
Yeah, for sure. I think personally it made me a little bit more confident in my identity as a Asian girl, Singaporean girl, loving a discipline that is not very common in where the circles that we are in, as well as making me a bit more confident in expressing myself. Because in an environment like that, it's either you speak or you speak up in class, you express your views. Project work, it's very easy for your opinions to be drowned out by three other Brits who speak in a similar accent, understand each other, and laugh at similar jokes and things like that. So I think it made me a lot more confident in expressing myself, and assertive in that as well. And of course, professionally, I think it has helped with a lot of showcasing the world to my students in the classroom.
Okay.
In terms of a lot of the things that they learn in the classroom, they may not be able to understand or relate to a real world situation, or sometimes just giving them an example of how an earthquake really affects a city, showing them pictures of my travels, actually made them really excited as well. So I think it did help me professionally as well.
You sort of act as this conduit for all your global experiences to the kids that you're teaching, right?
Yeah, for sure. Especially with a lot of the geographical syllabus, they don't kind of experience that in Singapore as well. So I think that definitely helped.
Okay. And on the academic side, was geography at King's everything you expected, maybe more?
Yeah, I would like to think so.
That's a tentative answer.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that I was very excited about the King's Geography curriculum was an opportunity to do an overseas field trip module, which everybody is entitled to do in, I think, towards the end of the second year.
This was a term or a couple terms long?
If I don't remember wrongly, it's 1 semester long. So 1 term long. Okay. 1 term long. So probably like 3 to 4 months long.
Okay.
And it was exciting because we got to choose from a variety of different research topics that we wanted to focus on. And when I had chose King's, I had already decided what I wanted to do. So in the second year, it was an easy decision. I did earthquake studies in San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
So it was really exciting because we got to go with professors who specialized in the area. And then we traveled there together. We looked at the seismometers. We visited like the different subject matter experts there, the departments and the governments who were overseeing that. And I think that is an experience that I really, really enjoyed, because it's one of those eye-opening experiences where you see what you've learned for years, from my secondary school syllabus to the A-level syllabus, and then in university, you really get to engage with the subject matter.
Did you ever think about going into research?
For sure. My time in Columbia after King's
Right.
did waver that a lot. And I think that was a time where I really, really challenged myself to think about what I wanted to do after teaching, whether it was going to be research or something else, because with the syllabus at Columbia, I got to do a lot of research work with some of the organizations there.
Well, tell us about that. So first of all, why Columbia? How did your time at King's lead you to Columbia? And of course, why the Masters in Climate and Society?
So I think one of the topics that I really engaged very well with when I was in King's was the whole idea of how natural disasters are not actually natural, right? Because if a city was able to mitigate against it, it wouldn't be a disaster. Basically, that's the idea of it. And one of the sub-verticals that I was interested within this kind of umbrella of debate was the climate disaster.
Okay.
And how we could mitigate that. And I think back then, when I was studying, this reviews my age, but back then when I was studying, climate science was kind of the up-and-coming thing. It was very widely talked about, and that course in Columbia particularly thinks about how climate interacts with the human society and how we can reduce a lot of that from it becoming a climate disaster.
And
That
you had
was
some
one.
pretty cool work experiences when you were in Columbia as well, right?
Yes. So one of and with that, one of the other reasons that drew me to Columbia was the fact that the course comes with the opportunity to work for an affiliate organization, and some of that included big names like NASA. But eventually, I chose to do it with the Earth Institute that was attached to Columbia University. I did a lot of work around thinking about one of the climate what do we call it? One of the climate variations called the El Nino and the La Nina cycles. And thinking about how some of that has changed throughout the years, observing patterns, doing predictions around how the El Nino and La Nina cycles are going to be upcoming. So that was really exciting work to be engaging with people who I would be reading their academic research on when I was in King's, and then after actually working with them. Yes. So it was really, really cool. Time in Columbia was awesome.
And then so the year ends, you come back to Singapore and you go straight into NIE. And that's your fifth straight year of studying.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And that must have been a bit of a change of pace.
I think what struck me more was a change in content.
Okay.
I think in the 3 years in King's and then the year in Columbia, I was very immersed in my academic interests. And then coming back to NIE pivoted me into maybe what I call a bit more reality, right? Where it was
more vocational.
Yeah, very much vocational, very much professional. You're thinking about things like classroom management, about planning curriculum, how to managing students psychologically and all that as well. So I think the change in content was a little bit more of a bigger thing for me than the change in pace.
Before we continue, I would like to take a quick break to remind you to subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review on your favorite platform. Your feedback helps us improve and to reach a wider audience to provide further insight into this arduous journey. Also, if you have any questions or suggestions for future episodes, feel free to email us at our email linked in the description below. We'd love to hear from you. I guess, what does the bond actually look like? So you come back. Does that first year count towards your bond, or was it outside of the 6 years? Okay, so then you finish with NIE, you have 5 years left.
Yes.
What happens?
Right. So after post-NIE, I was posted to a secondary school to teach geography and my
right?
Yes.
Where was that? That school?
It's in the west.
Okay.
The west of Singapore. So that's where I got to teach both lower and upper secondary geography across the express and normal academic streams as well. And then my second teaching subject was mathematics, so I taught a couple of classes in mathematics as well.
So you get a choice of what you teach. Or did you indicate that when you got the scholarship? Was it
Yes.
only after you finished with studying? How did it work?
I indicated that when we applied for the scholarship.
Okay.
Yes.
So somewhere in their systems, they were Geraldine geography.
Yes.
And then
that's
how
right.
did math come into play?
I think it was more of a logical choice,
Okay.
right? That between the marking load of a humanities subject, I just wanted to balance that out with a subject that requires a little bit less of that narrative and prose marking.
Right.
And I like to think that I am able to express mathematical concepts relatively well.
I'm not. How was your time at? Were you only with one school all the way through?
Yes, so after Hawaii, I was with Hawaii for about I was with them for about slightly over 2 years. And then I applied to the Educational Technology Division.
Okay,
Where-
and so that's when you were more sort of curriculum and
Yes.
policy focused?
Yes. Interestingly, I eventually landed to go to the education technology side of the house because that was arising from some of the research projects that I was doing with them already when I was a teacher in
Tech
Hawaii.
side of what, sorry?
The education technology side of the MOE.
Of
Yes.
the MOE. Okay, and what was the kind of work that you were doing over there? Because that's completely different, right?
Yes. So it was a lot about thinking backwards from what our students' needs are, what our pain points our teachers are facing, and then working with some other partners and organizations to come up with prototypes for teachers and students to use that we would be thinking about implementing in the future.
And was there anything that you were involved with over COVID? Because that must have been a time where everything then switched digital, right?
Yes, for sure. I think a lot of that was. I'm just thinking what I can share.
Did you?
Yeah, I
sign
think
an
we'll pass on
NDA?
this. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
no worries.
Just to be
what do you want
sure.
What do you want to go to next? Since we've already. Anything else you want to talk about with the Bond MOE? Or you want to move to Ivy Prep?
I think all good.
Yeah. Okay. And so you finished the bond, right?
Yes.
Maybe she was leading forward. So you 6 years passed, or 5 years passed rather, and you finished the bond. What made you want to move out? Why not stick around, go back to teaching, or even stay in the edtech space? Well, I guess you did stick around in the edtech space for a while with us.
Yes.
But what was the decision process behind choosing to move? I guess private. I guess you can call it.
Yes. I think it's always a bit of on one end the grass is always greener on the other end, and the other is I just wanted to try something outside of public sector because you never know till you try, right? And I won't say that going back to the public sector is something that I will never consider. But I just thought that an experience in the private sector, again, similar to why I decided to go overseas, could eventually lead to me bringing more value to a role that I could be playing in the future.
Right.
But at the core of it, I'm still very, very much an educator and interested in education. So I think when I was looking outside of the public sector, it was a lot of roles that were still in the education sector, related to education. And that was one of the reasons why I was connected with Ivy Prep as well.
And you were a big help to us, of course, especially during the early stages of Quest. How was that
Yes.
experience building that or working on those projects?
It was very fast paced, but it was also my first attempt into thinking a little bit about creating an edtech product. In the past, it was a lot of interacting with people who have created the product already. So being involved in the process end to end from conceptualization to actually what it means to create the product was my first experience with my first experience of Ivy Prep, and fully appreciate the team here for walking me through the process. And it led me to think a lot about, when you want to deliver an education software product, it's a bulk of the work is not about the content. A bulk of the work is a lot about the UX, the UI, and everything else in between. And I think that really opened my eyes to many different specializations as well. within teams.
Did that have any impact on what you're doing right now at AWS? Or is there something that's completely different?
I think if anything, it gives me a greater appreciation
Okay.
for the partners that we work with who have developed the product that's that robust.
And what do you do right now? If whatever you can talk about or that you're allowed to talk about.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just going to fold this up. It's bothering me a bit.
Okay.
Sorry. Yes. So what I do at work now is I'm a partner manager for EdTech independent software vendors at AWS. So we work with basically EdTech software vendors who have built their solutions on the AWS platform. And a big part of my work is working with these partners to think about their product market fit in the new market, facilitating that with, the different stakeholders that AWS work with, and helping them to grow a new market. Yes.
And why this role specifically? How do you find your way there? I'm sure that the whole interview process was quite a long one, right? I guess it's a standard story. We see a lot of guys come out of government service, especially the scholars, and then move into tech.
Yes.
Right? And I guess over here you had that incredibly specific, education-specific experience.
Yes.
And so it made sense that they then took you for
Yeah.
tech. Has it been was it an easy, was it sort of plug and play? Did you slot in pretty easily, or was there a steep learning curve?
Oh, the learning curve was very, very steep.
Oh, okay.
Because I think the specialization that I had with education and edtechs helps me to appeal our services better to the partners that have built edtech solutions. But I think at the end of the day, the bread and butter of AWS is we are still a cloud computing company.
Right.
And learning all of those different services that we offer and how these services build up into a solution, edtech solution that I'm working to sell, was that steep learning curve, because I've never been in a tech company. I've never been a developer or even a UX UI designer.
Well, you were doing some of that stuff for us.
Well, I guess that did help.
Yeah,
Well,
well.
that but
You did
I
quite
think
a
that
lot for
learning-
us, actually, yeah.
Yeah, so the learning curve was steep, very, very, very steep. But I
You sort of settled into it now.
yeah, very much so.
And now you're sort of full-time with AWS and you're no longer working with us on Quest, but you've stuck around as a strategist.
Yes.
Why is that?
I think a part of the educator side of me still wants to help students with their journey in terms of whether is it college shortlisting, whether is it thinking about what's next for them, what they wanted to explore at junior college and all that. I think this helps me stay true to my educator roots.
And there are tons of students who are going to be in the position you once were, right? They're sitting maybe at the end of secondary school or the beginning or even the end of JC. They're thinking about what they may want to do moving forward. And many of them, especially the locals, will be thinking about government scholarships, right? Across the board. Could be MOE, could be PSC, could be MFA, SAF, what have you. Is there any advice that you have, not just for them, but I guess even for the students that you work with on an everyday basis? Is there anything words of wisdom that you would leave them with?
I think the most memorable thing I did when I was back in that position was doing the MOE internship.
Okay.
Because it helped me go into the scholarship with my eyes wide open, and I knew what I was getting myself into. And it, on one end, it helps you evaluate whether that particular scholarship is right for you. On the other hand, it helps you with the scholarship interviews as well, because you know what you're talking about. You know how you want to, you have a better angle to think about how you want to contribute when you are in that role when you come back from your university studies. So I would say trying out a short stint that's related to that scholarship would be very useful, both for clarity as well as for your application.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for that, Geraldine. And thank you very much for your time today. I really
thank you for
appreciate
having me.
everything. And thank you, of course, dear applicants, for joining us again. Well, if anyone's thinking of applying for a scholarship, do let us know, and we can link you up with someone like Geraldine who's done it before, has run through the gauntlet, and has experience helping students as well.
Yes, for sure.
Thank you very much, and join us next time.
Thank you.
That's all for today's episode of Dear Applicants. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you found the content valuable and insightful. If you'd like to learn more about our guests or the topics we discussed, be sure to check out our show notes for links and further resources.